Hi, I'm Anya, also known as Meppity, and today's video is all about how to handle critique. Critique is a really important aspect of art. It allows you to grow both as a team and also as an individual. By being good at giving critique, you are a valuable team member and you are a good leader. By being good at receiving critique, it makes you more humble and also helps you improve as an artist. Critique encourages discussion and opens up people to new perspectives and ideas, and we can always have more of that in this world. This video is going to dive into the do's and don'ts of giving critique, receiving critique, and critiquing yourself. Before we dive in, I have a quick and exciting announcement. After years, I have finally updated my Patreon. So I used to have just one tier, but now I've updated it to 3. And with these new tiers comes new exclusive content. This ranges from Photoshop files to speed paints with voiceover to PDFs based on the videos I make, wallpapers, downloadable assets. So if you are interested, I suggest going down to the description, checking out patreon.com/Meppity and see if that's something that interests you. Today, because I don't really have any visual examples for what I'm talking about, I've decided to overlay a speed paint of my brand new profile picture. What you'll notice is I actually ended up making 3 separate designs, 2 initial designs, and then one which was the finished product, which was a hybrid of the 2. I'm not gonna go into detail here about the process of it, but I've made a separate video which is up on my Patreon if you do want to find out about the specific thinking behind these images. As it seems most of my videos begin these days, let's look at the definition of today's topic. Critique can be defined as evaluating a theory or practice in a detailed and analytical way. For an artist, this can be ranging from the visuals to the story to the presentation of a piece of artwork. Critique can come in so many forms, but there's core elements here that will make you a successful critiquer and a successful critiquee. First up, giving critique. So I have a healthy list of do's for giving critique, but essentially being good at critique boils down to engaging with the artist, finding out more about them and actually actively seeking out achieving their goals. If you can maintain a sincere interest in what they're doing, then you're most of the way there already. Before the actual critique begins, it is really important to ask the person if they want critique from you in the first place. Of course, this doesn't apply if they've already asked, but consent is important, right? And make sure that what you're about to provide to them is something that they actually would like to receive. Once you're ready and good to go, ask what the artist's objectives are. By knowing the artist's goals, you can make more informed suggestions and help them towards their goal rather than, accidentally steering them further from it. For example, let's say someone painted a dark forest scene, and you're like, ooh, why not make it more angular and twisted to make it seem scarier? That's all well and good, but what if their objective was to make it a cozy nighttime scene? Now you're pointing them in the wrong direction because you haven't clarified what they are actually going for. You should also ask if there's anything specific that they'd like to be critiqued on. This could be technical aspects, or the concept as a whole, or maybe the arrangement of a piece. Perhaps the artist only has one main focus for this artwork, and the rest doesn't matter. So by finding this out, you won't be wasting your breath. Another big thing is checking in on limitations. Do they have a limited amount of time, limited budget, limited resources? Or does the artist themselves have limited technical skills? That kind of thing. Sometimes, perfection is impossible because of factors beyond our control. We can still make the most of our parameters though. Part of the fun of art and critique is the problem-solving aspect. There's always a way to make something work, even if you're constrained in some way. So work that little brain of yours to come up with creative solutions together. Have you noticed the theme of asking questions? Well, it's good to keep asking more. It's good to signal if you are curious or confused about anything. Here's a couple exemplar questions that you could ask. There's so much you can learn about an individual and their art if you're willing to talk openly. So, what are their inspirations? What references did they use? Is this a standalone piece? Is this for a job, portfolio? What are their biggest current concerns? Honestly, there's an endless list of questions that you could ask, so I'm not going to give them all here, but those are a start. Do comment on strengths and positives. It's pretty easy to get carried away discussing the weaknesses of a piece, but don't forget to say nice things too. Not only does this kind of sugarcoat the hard to swallow stuff, you remind the recipient that, just because I'm pointing out weaknesses doesn't mean you don't have awesome strengths too. And it's good to make people feel, good. Have you ever heard of a compliment sandwich? Well, they're very tasty and, more importantly, very healthy. So here is the recipe. First of all, a sandwich is not going to be a sandwich unless you have bread. And bread in this case is a compliment. It is the first and the last thing that our teeth meet. Next comes the filling. Now, filling is the actual critique itself. You can make this more or less whatever you'd like, so long as it is constructive. But also, it's great to consult whoever you are making the sandwich for on what their preferences are. Maybe they're vegetarian, so they only want that type of filling. And a sandwich would be kind of dry and bland if you didn't add some condiments. Condiments are the connective language that you use to join the bread and the filling. Did you know that sandwiches were invented so some fancy earl could hold and eat his food with one hand whilst he played card games with the other? The bread is what holds the rest of the sandwich together, so always remember to say something nice about a person's artwork. Otherwise, the filling, or in this case, the critique, will spill all over the floor and ruin the card game. Use descriptive language. The more specific you are with your critique, your constructive criticism, your suggestions, whatever you want to call it, the more use that the artist can glean from your words. Good, bad, nice, pretty, etc. are all empty and meaningless. Instead, try something a little more beefed up, such as, hey, your shape language in the leaves is kind of lackluster, because there's a mishmash of circles, squares, and triangles. I suggest emphasizing just one shape so the leaves feel cohesive. I have not shown you an image of whatever I described, but I'm sure you can picture it semi-well. I think a good measure of if you're being descriptive enough is if that description would make sense without someone actually looking at the artwork for reference. Do take initiative if you can. When I say take initiative, I mean provide solutions if you can find them. If you spot an issue and know how to fix it, why not tell the artist? Even better, you could offer multiple solutions so the artist has more choices. Being a problem solver and taking initiative is a valuable asset in team projects. The co-director of Coco, Adrian Molina, was promoted to his role because he offered solutions to the team's struggles, and he did it politely and kindly. So who knows, maybe you could get yourself an upgrade if you are just a useful team member. A really good way of taking initiative is by doing draw-overs. Why not extend past your words? You may not always have time, and that's okay, but if there's a quick fix you can draw out, it may be faster than trying to explain things through speech. Outside of doing a draw-over, maybe it's a broader concept that you want to provide a solution to. Sometimes you have a particular idea or opinion, but someone out there already did a better job of explaining it. It makes sense in those cases to send a link to the artist of that particular video, article, book, etc. Suggesting resources also means that the artist can revisit this information time and time again. If you see repeated flaws across an artist's work, point out how they can work on it. It's kind of that, give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day, teach a man to fish, he'll be eating forever kind of thing. This can come in the form of maybe they don't quite understand lighting, so you point it out and explain it to them, and now suddenly all their future artwork is better as opposed to just one particular piece. set aside personal bias. You know, we all have very different tastes out there, and that's fine. But when critiquing, it's important to make sure you're adhering to the critiquee's taste. Remember, the goal is to execute the pre-established vision. A lot of the do's are about asking questions, but the final do is about listening to the answers. Sometimes the recipient may get defensive. Sometimes they may have the perfect explanation as to why they disagree with your point. Whatever it is, be patient and attentive. If you're listening to what they say, then it means they're going to trust your critique more, and it'll help you give them a more tailored feedback. Alright, moving on from the do's, now we're going on to the don'ts of giving critique. Do not give unsolicited critique. Going back to the idea of consent, I don't think anybody wants to suddenly be slammed with some harsh criticism when they're just trying to go about their day. It's rather rude to just come up to someone and feel like you're entitled to saying your opinion about something that may be deeply personal to them. That being said, we must acknowledge the grey area, which is critiquing public figures or larger bodies of work. If people had to ask for permission every single time they wanted to critique something, then the entire commentary community wouldn't exist. I can't tell if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, I'm certainly not immune to listening to drama and all of the gossipy type of videos, but do we need those in our lives? I know critiquing public figures and the work they do has landed me in hot water in the past years, so I've learnt my mistake and I'm going to be more sensitive about it if I ever choose to do that again. I think the most important thing, if you do choose to give unsolicited critique, is to remain respectful and try and be as neutral as possible. This brings me on to my next don't, which is do not make it personal or use ad hominem attacks and so forth. The last thing you want to do is turn a critique session from looking at someone's artwork to looking at them as a person. That is bound to cause trouble and could lead to things like burnt bridges, messed up friendships, people losing respect for you. Remember, you're here to critique artwork, not people. If you dislike a person, that doesn't matter. The artwork is entirely separate. And we're not talking about liking someone's art, like listening to the music of some problematic person. That's a whole other deal. I'm talking about when you are specifically in conversation with this person, giving feedback. The artist is different to the art. Another thing to not do is insist on changing something that is beyond the scope of the project. As previously mentioned, sometimes there's limitations like time, budget, resources. If you insist upon a change that takes, say, a full day, but the deadline is in 3 hours, then your point is redundant and you're just going to leave the artist feeling bad about themselves. Avoid suggesting changes that are just the core idea of what the artist is going for. Things like themes or obvious stylistic choices or just generally personal taste are stuff that should more or less be left untouched. This is possibly not the case if you're working on a team project with a wider common goal, but in most cases, we've already established what we're going for, and so it makes sense to make your critique lean towards that rather than away. Do not be vague or otherwise unhelpful. If your words are wishy-washy, kind of meaningless, then there's not much that the artist can do about what you've suggested. Because are you really suggesting anything if you just say, it looks okay, or, something looks off? Like, what can you do with that information? It's as useful as someone saying to me, "Oh, Anya, you look wrong." It's like, what does that even mean? Is there something in my teeth? Is my makeup flawed? Did people just think I'm ugly? It's just going to send the person spiraling because now they know there's something that needs to be changed, but they don't even know what it is. The final don't is a really big one, and that is never use the word but after giving a compliment. Going back to the compliment sandwich, the condiment is the stuff that joins the filling to the bread. And people can accidentally, I know I have in the past, use the word but. What this means, though, is you are making your previously positive statements redundant because you've just cancelled it out with a "but because so-and-so is bad, this good thing no longer counts." Instead of using negative language like that, try something more positive, like, "I love the way that this looks. In order to enhance it, I suggest doing XYZ." Okay, so after all of that, you should be pretty decent at giving critique. But do note that these things take patience. I am still working on being a good critiquer myself, and it's just something that, like with every aspect of art, you need to practice, you need to try, and unfortunately it might mean you stumble a couple times. And now, the hard one, receiving critique. How do you do that without the emotional trauma? Here are the do's of receiving critique. Reach out to people who you artistically trust. If you are seeking critique, it makes sense to go to somebody who you actually value the opinion of. Are these people you'd want to be in a team with, or are they someone whose artwork and opinions you look towards? Often good critiquers, especially in like a work or a school environment, build a reputation of being good at that. So, it makes sense to reach out to those individuals. Do also reach out to people who you trust, but maybe aren't so creatively inclined. Of course, this is dependent on what you're asking for critique on, but it's really, really good to have a quote-unquote normal person look at your stuff. I will note though, be prepared to take in a different type of critique from these people. They may not be so well versed in giving critique. They may have not watched this video. And it also means that you may not take every piece of advice that the person gives, but it's worth listening in the first place. Do be prepared to justify your choices. Seeing as we've already gone over giving critique, you should be expecting people to ask you a lot of questions. And now it's your turn to answer those questions. In my previous video, I talked about the importance of specificity. I'm not going to repeat myself here, but it's linked in the little eye thing in the corner. I think it's somewhere up there. But basically, what I'm asking here is for you to justify your choices, because then you're proving to people that you are organized in your thoughts, your ideas, and your plans. And now the don'ts of receiving critique. Do not try to please everybody. This is a habit I'm still trying to unlearn, and it's mostly for your own creative sake. If you take on every single piece of critique that every single person has given you, you might get some contradicting opinions. You may get people who have ideas that you disagree with that aren't actually going to impact the quality of your art. You may get stuff that just doesn't make sense to what you're going for. If you try and accommodate everyone, then you're going to lead yourself into a watered down final product. An example, it's not quite critique, but I have frequently asked people okay, here are 5 options for a design. Pick your favorite. I would ask a healthy amount of people, which led to a lot of votes. But then sometimes I would have maybe a 3-way tie. And instead of just picking what my gut suggests, I end up trying to combine those 3 designs together. But that can lead to a homogenized and unconsidered final product. Do not take critique personally. Look, I know that you're being vulnerable already, so it may feel kind of sore to be hearing things you don't want to hear, but this can spark progress. A lot of it is about taking things in, being quiet, taking a step back, and then when you're ready to kind of process what you've just heard, then you can move on and make the most of this information. If someone is trying to make things personal, then you should disengage and disregard what they say. Well, you don't have to entirely disregard what they say, but what I mean is you do not owe them your attention at all. That's their fault for being rude and poking at things that shouldn't be poked at. Don't feel obliged to accept critique that you didn't ask for. This goes right back to the beginning with consent. If you didn't ask for something, then you do not have to take it. No one is entitled to telling you what to do, and you certainly do not owe that to anybody. Don't ignore advice just because you didn't like what was said. Sometimes the truth hurts, and we have to be patient with ourselves to take in the things that aren't pleasant to our ears. And I know it's easier said than done, but with practice you'll learn to hear what people have to say and remind yourself that, okay, I'm not liking what I'm hearing now, but these words are being said in order to make me creatively stronger. Gotta think about the long-term goals, not the short-term emotions. If you flip that on its head, do not feel entitled to receive critique from anybody, especially if it's free. A lot of people are very busy or just don't feel comfortable dissecting somebody else's work. And so if you ask them, hey, could you take a look at my work and see what you think? And they say no, that's fine. In my case, I was receiving a massive influx of critique requests a couple years ago. And trust me, I really did want to look at everybody's stuff, but I simply did not have the time. What I did to counteract that was create a monetary barrier. Now, this was ranging from $4 to $10 per critique, and I kept it that number because I didn't want to exclude anyone because of financial constraints. I just needed to set up this barrier so that I could reduce that influx. I like giving free critique when I can, but at the end of the day, time is money, and I have rent to pay, and when I'm only asking for a little bit, it just helps balance everything out for me. A lot of people are doing the same thing, and so, if people ask for money for critique, don't take offense to that. If they're willing to give free critique, great. If they don't want to give any critique at all, fine. Hey, Editing Anya here. Okay, so I think I missed a pretty big point. If you have received critique, it means that you have received someone's time, energy, and attention. So, it's a pretty big favor. Therefore, it's polite to offer that time and energy back. It doesn't have to be in the form of critique, but it could be. It, depends on the circumstances. If that's not appropriate, it's always good to keep in mind paying it forward instead. So, a good place to do that is on my Discord server. On there, we have a channel called Feedback Friday, where it can be just Fridays, it can be any day. You submit your artwork and people are encouraged to give feedback. But the way it works is if you're putting artwork in there, you should also be giving feedback to other people. It's a nice little environment and we have all kinds of discussion over there. So the link is in the description if you would like to join the server. Alright, how do I get back to the rest of the video? Alright, we're on to the final section, and that is critiquing yourself. This is one of the trickiest things because now you're both giving and receiving critique all at once. So you have to be mean to yourself, but you also have to be kind to yourself. It's some real mental games up there. Here are the do's. Be as objective as you can. Try and see your work from an outside perspective. Try and look at your art as if you were a person who knows nothing about you nor your goals. Do, as I already mentioned, take a break from your art. Your eyes need time to adjust and refresh in order to have the best, most clear judgment ability. Have you ever had that thing where you're just staring so long at a word that you can't even recognize it anymore? I keep getting that with the word said, and I'm assuming it's spelt wrong, but it's like, nope, S-A-I-D, that's the one. But it messes with me. And that's because I get confused, and then I stare at it longer, and that confuses me even more. This is the same thing with art. If you are staring blankly at something for too long, then it just loses all of its meaning. By taking a break, you can then pretend that you've never seen it before, and suddenly your eyes are gravitating towards new details. Do reflect on what your personal goals are. A lot of artists tend to lose sight of what the core idea or vision was that they had at the start of a project. And this can come with time or just sort of losing the bigger picture. So if you are able to step back and remind yourself of what you were aiming for, then you can take a better look at your art and see if you were successful. Do celebrate the things that are going well. Guys, I'm sure you already know it, but art is hard, right? Suffering through feeling inadequate is unfortunately part of the process, but it's a sign that you're out there on the right path and improving. To counteract all the suffering that we go through as artists, remember to congratulate yourself on the things that do work well, because you know what? Those things are really cool and you did that. Finally, the don'ts. Do not ignore the obvious. If you in your gut or in your eyeballs can see that something isn't working, you have to be ready to admit that to yourself. Very recently, in fact, you've been watching the speed paint for it today, I finally updated my profile picture. And the finished product that you see in this speed paint didn't end up actually being the full final thing. So I realized afterwards that when my icon is super duper small, the skin by my chin and neck blends in with the background because the lines are too thin and the colors between the skin and background are too similar. I ended up changing that last second, even though I really didn't want to, because when the image is big, it looked cool. But the goal was to make an icon that could be super tiny, and so the finished product was, not meeting that. Sometimes it's like a procrastination thing where there's obvious places that need to be worked on, but you really don't want to bother. This could be specific to an art piece. For example, maybe there's just a section that is looking kind of wonky and you need to work on that. Or it could be broad, like you know that your sense of perspective is off, and so in order to improve all of your art as a whole, you need to practice it. It kind of sucks spending time on something that you've A, already spent a bunch of time on, or B, don't enjoy spending time on in the first place. But sometimes we have to pull ourselves through that so that our final works look, decent. Do not compare yourself to others. Now, I'm sure you've heard this one plenty of times before, but I cannot stress how important it truly is. When you are comparing yourself to others, you're comparing apples to oranges, because everybody learns different things at different rates and in a different order. Any amount of progress is a victory and should definitely be acknowledged. The only person you should be comparing yourself against is your past self, because you two are the only ones on the same timeline. Okay, so that was that. Hopefully now you guys have a little bit more of a handle on the idea of critique and how to work with it. Thank you so much for watching to the end. I hope you enjoyed, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe. I make all kinds of art-related content. Because I don't have a consistent upload schedule, I also suggest hitting that notification bell so you know when I do upload. If you want to see my portfolio and professional work, why not head to www.meppity.com. As for other social media, my handle is Meppity on all platforms. I have very recently joined TikTok, and I do hope to post more shorts on there, so why not give that a follow, Get in there early, see what I get up to in the coming months. As mentioned at the start of the video, don't forget that I have a Patreon. If you want exclusive content, why not head over there and see if it's for you. A huge thank you to my current patrons. I sincerely appreciate all of your support and your patience whilst I've been rearranging all of my stuff. Well, that's it from me for now. I hope you have a wonderful day, night, morning, evening, wherever you are, and I'll see you soon. Bye!